Hi everyone, it's Marianne and welcome to day 7 of 12 Days of Plantmas. Today, let's talk about 7 plant trends that need to go away in 2021. First off, this video is just meant to be silly and fun, not to be taken seriously at all. If you're doing any of the plant trends or you have the stuff that I'm going to mention in this video and you like them and you like doing them, you don't mind me at all. Just because I say I don't like it or don't like it anymore doesn't mean you shouldn't like it anymore as well. But yeah, so let's get on with the 7 things that I think that needs to go away in 2021. So the first one is macrame. Macrames are very beautiful. I love the way they look. I love the beachy, boho, and jungly vibe that they give out. And you can make macrame or you can purchase macrame. I particularly like the ones from Urban Outfitters. I even tried to DIY one of their designs of their macrame last year, and I love the process of making macrame. It's so therapeutic, just like taking care of plants. But as hanging planters, macrame are terrible. It's very difficult to water plants that are hanging on a macrame, even though if you have a saucer underneath the pot, or if you want to take down the plants off the macrame so you can water it or inspect it or do whatever you need to do with a plant. It's also very hard to remove it from the macrame without damaging the plant, especially if the plant is already starting to trail. So as a hanging planter, I stopped using macrame. I switched to using ring planters. I've also used the Wally Eco planter. It's great, but it can get pricey. So instead, I just DIY'd some hanging planters, and I also love using the Y-grid to hang up my planters. And I also turned some of my thrifted baskets into hanging planters, which is a lot easier to hang plants with than a macrame planter because there's an actual cash bow or something that holds the actual plant that makes it easier for me to take the plant up and down from the planter. The next plant trend that needs to go away in 2021 is leca. People might think that hating on this plant trend is a plant trend in itself, because more people are becoming more vocal about their dislike of leca, how it didn't really work for them or it didn't live up to the hype. And you know me, I've always been a leca skeptic. Leca has been trending for quite a while, not just this year. And I didn't try out leca until about summer this year, just to say that I've tried it before I completely knocked it. And so far my experience with it, and I know it's only been a few months, but I don't really like using leca, at least not as much or more than I like using soil or other mediums. I do have some plants in leca right now, but as far as my experience with leca, I've never experienced root rot a lot more than I did with leca, and the growth that's coming from my plants in leca are a lot smaller. And honestly, the maintenance of plants in leca, I feel like are a lot more upkeep than the plants that I have in soil or in other mediums. So I don't really get the hype with leca. I mean, I'm glad I tried it, and I'm probably still gonna keep the plants that I have in leca as long as I can keep it in that medium. But like what Maya VB Plants said, the upsizing of pots happens a lot more frequently with leca than it does with other mediums of my plants. If the plants that I currently have in leca outgrow their pot, I'm probably just going to transfer them into soil or into other mediums after that, and I'm just going to use leca for something else, maybe just for the topsoil or for, I don't know, something. So the third plant trend that needs to go away in 2021 is indoor greenhouses and grow tents, specifically the ones that are made out of plastic tarp. I don't really like those. I know for people who have more finicky plants and want a controlled environment for their house plants, grow tents are very useful for that. But for me, who have a very limited space and everything is basically on display, those types of indoor greenhouses and grow tents take up so much space and they're so unsightly. And since they're made of plastic, they're practically like shower curtains for your house plants. When it gets dirty, which it will, the buildup of the calcium and the water on those plastic tarps will be so difficult to remove and very hard to clean. So when the IKEA greenhouse cabinets became a thing in the plant world, I immediately hopped on it because it suits more of my needs, not just for the aesthetic, but for the space. I could fit so much plants in my IKEA Detolf cabinet. And far from me to call IKEA sustainable, but at least compared to those indoor greenhouses and grow tents that are made of mostly plastic tarp, the IKEA greenhouse cabinet, at least the one that I use, the Detolf, is made of glass, wood, and aluminum, which are all easily recyclable. And the fourth plant trend that needs to go away in 2021 is misting plants. I used to be an avid mister of plants, especially when I first started. It feels like I'm doing something good for my plants, but honestly, misting plants don't really do anything for our house plants. It just makes us plant parents feel better, especially if we are helicopter plant parents. And misting plants don't give enough humidity for our house plants, contrary to popular belief. Misting our plants would probably give them a couple of minutes of humidity. That's it. So for me, I've stopped misting my plants very early on this year because I don't really see any benefits for my plants. Plus, also, you'll get tired of doing it eventually. It's fun at first, but you'll get tired of it. At least I did. And to be honest, I haven't seen any real difference whether I missed my plants or not. And also for some types of plants, misting might not be a good thing for them, especially for house plants that have more delicate foliage or have the fuzzy leaves. It might just damage the foliage of the plants if you consistently mist them. So the only time that I am misting my plants is with my orchid plants. I use an orchid plant mist that gives the orchid nutrients on its foliage and on its flowers so that it can maintain its blooms a lot longer and also grow more flowers. And the number 5 plant trend that needs to go away in 2021 is pebble trays. When people talk about providing humidity for our houseplants, the pebble tray always comes up, and it drives me nuts because those pebble trays don't work, especially if you have larger plants. Pebble trays cannot provide enough humidity. If you're also not doing it correctly, you might just be letting your plants sit in water, especially if you put the water level a lot higher than the pebble. And that pebble tray, if you don't clean it out regularly, if you don't change the water frequently, it could be a breeding ground for bacteria, for pests, especially mosquitoes, and it could also form algae. I highly don't recommend using pebble trays for your plants. There are other ways to increase humidity for your house plants, and the best way that you can still provide humidity for your house plants if you have a drier climate or if you're using space heaters or have heaters on is using a humidifier. And number 6, and this could be a little bit controversial, is stealing plants. And I'm not trying to be classist or elitist about it, but just because you can't afford the plant doesn't mean you can steal the plant. Picking up cuttings that has fallen off houseplants at Home Depot or Lowe's is one thing, or maybe even foraging plants in a landscaping. Maybe some people actually went to the extreme this year and stole endangered and rare plants from nurseries and conservatories. And I know those are isolated incidents and just a handful of bad actors doesn't represent the entire plant community. And while those cases are extreme and one-off, I think they thought they can get away with it, or they think it's acceptable because stealing plants on a petty level has been normalized in the plant community. And by plant community, I'd say the plant online community, which is a very tiny slice of the overall plant community, because sometimes we are too self-involved in the plant online community that we don't realize that the plant community is much larger than those of us who share our plant journeys online. And I've heard, understand the different arguments when it comes to quote-unquote stealing plants. Some don't think it's actually stealing. Some think it's okay because it's a fight against capitalism. But what I'm saying is, at least let's not normalize or let people think it's okay to be stealing plants from nurseries, especially small business ones and conservatories and botanical gardens, or come from places that plants shouldn't be taken away from, especially plants that come from Hawaii. If you ever had an opportunity to go to Hawaii, you know that they make you sign a form that you're not supposed to take or bring back any agricultural product that is from Hawaii back into the mainland or wherever you're going once you leave Hawaii. So please, let's just respect that, and let's not steal plants or take plants where we're not supposed to be taking them. And the 7th and last plant trend that I want to go away in 2021 is using net pots. And this is directed more to the growers and plant sellers than it is to plant enthusiasts or plant consumers, because I have experienced this year 2 or 3 times where the plants that I bought that were potted already in the bigger pots were still in the net pot. And we're always advised that when we take our plants home, we shouldn't repot them right away. And I follow that advice, but then later on, I'll find out that my plant suddenly is ailing or suddenly just turned for the worse without me doing anything to it. Like the watering is on point, they have enough light, I fertilize them properly, but then suddenly they just started to die. When I take it out of the soil and see what's going on with the root system, I find this net pot. It suffocates the root ball until it just simply rots. And sometimes it's not even a plastic net pot like this. Some growers use the biodegradable net pots, but even those biodegradable ones don't break down quick enough before the roots outgrow them and the roots still get suffocated and eventually rots. So I beg growers, plant sellers to stop using net pots. I know it's more efficient and saves you space when you're just trying to propagate the plant, but if you are going to put them into bigger pots, please take out the net pots first. So this is my Rhaphidophora tetrasperma now, at least one of the plants. The other plant is doing well. The roots were still intact, but this one, because the root ball was so wrapped up in the net pot, it rotted and I was just left with this one. Luckily, I caught it early enough, even though all the roots are gone, that the stem hasn't started yellowing yet, and I hope this one bounced back. But I'm upset because it has started to grow this beautiful fenestrated leaves and now its roots are rotted and now stopping its growth, which is driving me crazy because I am scared that I won't be able to save this plant. So those are the 7 plant trends that I want gone in 2021. But like I said in this intro, if you like these plant trends, continue doing them, continue using them. Just because I don't like them or don't want to use them or don't want to do them doesn't mean that you shouldn't either. So that's it for today's Plantmas, and I'll see you on day 8 of 12 days of Plantmas. Bye!